Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to the Human Beauty Movement podcast. My name is Jennifer Norman. I'm the founder of the Human Beauty Movement and your host. I created the Human Beauty Movement to help inspire well-being in the form of radical self-love, radical self-acceptance, and radical self-expression. On this podcast, I invite beautiful humans from all corners of the globe to join me for open conversations about their life lessons and the important work that they're doing to help heal humankind. Take a moment now to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. I am so glad that you're here joining me for today's show. Did you know that depression, anxiety, and recurrent pain impact 72% of Americans, while another 61% suffer from digestive disorders? My guest today understands firsthand that emotional, physical, and spiritual pains go hand in hand. Deborah Charnes is a remarkable woman who has spent 50 years exploring the world, uncovering simple tools for health and happiness. Plagued by chronic lower back pain and digestive disorders in her early years, she knew she had to make a lifestyle change. Previously a corporate exec, she decided to ditch those high-pressure demands in favor of traveling, learning, and gaining fresh wisdom from a dozen gurus on various continents. Deborah became one of the world's first bilingual certified yoga therapists, and she's made it her life's work to never stop learning or sharing. She features some of her favorite lessons for optimal wellness in her book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, Wisdom for Mind, Body, and Spirit. I can't wait to dive in. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Hello, it's a joy to be here with you.
It is truly a joy. I love that you joke that your happiest and healthiest days rolled in after you qualified for AARP discounts. I just want to give a shout out to everybody like myself who's vibrant over 50. Yay for us.
It's even better once you're over 65 and get benefits.
That's what I heard. That's what I hear. It's true. It's true. Your life is truly your own. I want to hear all about your background and how you came to appreciate holistic health.
I came into the holistic realm very early in my life. You mentioned that I was diagnosed with both digestive disorders and a back issue when I was very young.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, I also am very thankful that I had those problems very young because I went to specialists when I was an adolescent. And fortunately, neither of them recommended any surgery or any meds. They talked about different habits, lifestyle habits that I needed to change. For example, postural alignment or strengthening the core for the back, sleeping on a hard bed. I personally am very comfortable sleeping on a rug, on my floor, on my yoga mat. My daughter might think I'm a little weird, but I tell her all the time, it's better for my back. And so I came into elements of what I know today as yoga and yoga therapy through those issues. As far as my digestive disorders, I didn't know what meditation was. I didn't know what breathwork was, but I found them on my own instinctively, intuitively. I recognized that if I breathed just slowly and if I had a mindful approach to relaxation, that was really the only thing that would help me with severe pain.
When you are able to use your breath to calm your mind, calm the heart rate, the vagus nerve, and a lot of people are very familiar with what the vagus nerve does these days and how it really is so powerful.
I also want to give credit to who I call my 13th guru, because my book is based on a dozen of my gurus around the world, but the 13th guru is my mother. And she used to always be very skeptical of modern medicine. At the same time, she did go to a number of holistic professionals. So at a very early age, I heard the connection between mind and body, which I don't think it was, again, at my age, because I'm 65. So when I was a child, I don't think it was all that common. So I did learn about that from her. And my mother was diabetic. She required insulin shots a couple times a day. So I was always aware of diabetes, and my mother was a very educated diabetic in terms of how to manage her blood sugar. So that was also something that I was exposed to very young. I never ate anything white for the most part. My mom would make cookies, and she would joke that they weren't like cookies, they were more like rocks. But I ate them and I liked them. And still today, I am a big vegan, gluten-free, low glycemic
Mm.
baker and cook. And of course, everything without any sweetener tastes wonderful to me. And to me, the heavier and the more fiber and seeds, the better. But again, for other people, they might think of them as rocks instead of cookies. But anyway, from a dietary standpoint, I was also exposed to that early on. My mom bought all of her peanut butter at the health food store, which was freshly ground. And of course, I have taken everything I learned from my mom and I upped it. So I avoid peanuts, but I love freshly ground almond butter, macadamia nut butter, sunflower seed butter, cashew butter, and tahini. I consider sugar a drug.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
yes,
many people are addicted to sugar. And of
yes.
course, society says it's fine to be addicted to sugar.
It makes them buy more regularly, and so it fuels an economy that is based upon addictions. So, I mean, we could probably have a whole podcast on that alone, but it's interesting that you had these certain things based upon your upbringing, what your mom taught you early on, and so it was almost glimmers or glimpses into what was to come.
Yeah, well, also in terms of what sometimes you just can't explain where it comes from, but some things come from inside. For example,
Mhm.
such as my discovering meditation and breath work. Well, another thing that came from inside when I was 16 years old was vegetarianism. And I didn't know the term vegetarianism. I had never met another vegetarian before, but I was in Mexico and I was visiting a slaughterhouse.
Mm.
And I personally can't understand how anyone can visit a slaughterhouse and not become a vegetarian.
Yeah, yeah, I think that
But
that would be the case for many of us. I don't like to know what it is that I'm eating sometimes when it comes to meat.
however, I was with a group, and to my knowledge, I was the only one that pretty much vowed that day to not eat meat again. Everyone else continued to eat the meat.
Hmm.
One of the chapters in my book is about a Satvic lifestyle. Satvic is an Ayurvedic term,
Mm.
and it means pure. And traditionally, Satvic means vegetarian, but it also means a lot more things. So there are a lot more things that you do with a Satvic lifestyle.
Mm.
And I talk about how back in the day when I was a vegetarian, I remember eating in Mexico on a bus. I remember they handed out sandwiches, and I think I ate white bread with mayonnaise and lettuce, which of course I think is so disgusting now. I would never eat white bread. I would never eat mayonnaise, and iceberg lettuce. I would never eat iceberg lettuce. It has no nutrients.
Yeah.
That was my only choice. And I also went hungry many, many times. And I chose to go hungry rather than eat whatever else there was.
Mm. So now I think it was 2011, you decided to pack it up. You were in corporate America for a while and just decided, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. And you made a lifestyle change. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, I loved the work that I did, but my work was always very stressful. I worked 80 hours a week. I traveled all over the United States and oftentimes beyond the United States because I was responsible for US Hispanic and Latin American marketing communications for some of the biggest brands out there. I worked with CEOs, I worked with celebrities, I worked with politicians. It was very stressful, but I loved it. Some people are fueled by that stress, right?
Hmm.
It's like a
Oh
turn
yeah.
on, and it's
Oh
also a
yeah.
drug.
Yeah.
It's a drug as well.
Yeah.
And I believe inherently I'm the kind of person from an Ayurvedic perspective and from the doshas, it's more kapha, and the kapha people tend to be, it's considered grounded, the
Mm-hmm.
kapha people, it's water and it's earth, but we can be sluggish.
I wouldn't have pegged you for a kapha. Okay.
Yeah, but it's because in order to counteract all that, I turn everything on and I don't. Part of a Satvic diet, which I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
before, Satvic is no caffeine. So I don't use the common drugs that most people use to keep them going. So I have to turn now inside to my own internal energy to keep me going. Anyway, I think that all of the stress and all of the nonstop travel kind of fueled me, not fired me losing my job. It was my fuel. And I got used to all the stress. A lot of people, again, a lot of people use the stress in a positive way. I did a lot of work as crisis management and crisis prevention. So crises were normal for me. And when I'm talking about a crisis, I'm not talking about, oh, what dress am I going to wear today? Or, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. I mean, I'm talking about things such as shootings,
Mhm.
shootings or bomb threats, things that are serious
Yeah,
crises.
significant traumatic events. Hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, I did that for decades and I was constantly doing my own breath work and my own yoga. And of course, I always had my own vegetarian diet and I was trying to eat healthy. Even when I was traveling, I would take powders with me, like protein powder or green powder or powdered food that I could just add hot water to and have nourishing food, because a lot of times I would be at convention centers where there was no option for anything healthy to eat. So anyway, I got used to that. And finally, I was at my spiritual center and it was kind of wild because 2 weeks in a row, there were two different lecturers. So it was not the same person, it was not the same topic. But what I got out of each lecture, again, different topic, different lecture, but what I got out of both of them was I need to leave this career because I was promoting services and products, which I knew. I was always promoting services and products, which I never supported myself. I never believed in any of the services and products I was
Oh,
presenting.
oh, interesting.
So, it was kind of like I was doing work that I didn't believe in. So I decided to leave the corporate world. I opened up my own boutique agency and I only took on clients that I believed in. And my tagline when I opened this up in 2011 was for positive transformation. And this was all, of course, from a corporate communications standpoint in terms of positive transformation through marketing communications and
Hmm.
positive transformation of the community through, again, the kinds of clients that I wanted to work with.
Hmm.
And once I did that, what's kind of interesting is all of a sudden more positive transformation of myself took place. Here I was all about, I'm going to help you, client, positively transform our community through whether it be through arts or through health or whatever. And yet I found that by leaving the corporate world, I was able to do more positive transformation of myself. And I ultimately became a certified yoga therapist. And to me, yoga therapy is all about positive transformation of body, mind, and spirit.
Hmm. That it is, that it is. And that is one thing that I preach relentlessly, that the world changes when you change. It's symbiotic and it cannot be helped that when we are putting forth that we have dissonance between our work and what we truly value, or when we are go, 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 going, and we are letting adrenaline and in some cases, like you said, a little bit of ego. People thrive on it, and they love the titles, they love what they're be able to do in terms of meeting success out in the world. That will fuel you to a certain place, but can leave you feeling empty when it's not really self-fulfilling, when it's not really feeding your soul. And getting back to that place where you realized that through your spiritual center and these two talks, these whispers that are coming to you, and you realize, I need to start fulfilling myself. I need to start looking inward at what I value and then helping others. And in helping others, you are helping yourself. You are making a transformation inside out and outside in. It's a very powerful lesson.
Exactly. And just as in the time when I was at the slaughterhouse and I may have been the only person that became vegetarian, there were obviously many other people that were in the room both of those weeks when I was in those sessions. And I'm sure none of the others decided to leave their jobs. But again, it was something that, of course, for me, it had been festering. I knew all the time, my entire career, I pretty much knew that I didn't believe in the products and services that I was promoting. And so I wanted to take my knowledge, my experiences, and carry those through to the products and services that I felt good about. And again, that would make positive transformation in the community.
Yeah, more and more people these days are looking for that values alignment. Because I think for far too long, perhaps we have been at the mercy of having a job, getting paid, doing the whole, going through the motions. And it was almost like your rite of passage. You go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, and you're checking these boxes and you're ticking off the boxes along the way. But ultimately, not very often in the past had we been in a place where we really questioned, what, why am I doing this? How do I really feel about it? What is this really? What is the impact that I'm having? What is the legacy that I'm leaving behind? And it's nice that in mass now, I think a lot of people are really turning to a different kind of life, a different kind of way, and a different kind of a model of what success truly is in life.
I'm jealous because when I travel around the world, I meet so many young people who are already embracing
There.
that. And it took me so long. And I am wowed by these
Yeah.
young
Yeah.
people.
Bring it on. I think that for a lot of time in America, which is where this podcast is based, there was always a lot of comparing. It's like America always had this sense of pride and ego compared to any other nation. It's like, we work the hardest, we make the most money, we are the most successful, we wear that badge of honor that we're working 80 hours a week. You guys are lazy. You're taking, what, 2 months off in the summertime. What kind of a life is that? We didn't realize what we were doing to ourselves, and that it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable living. And now all of a sudden it's like, wow, the blue zones, wow, Italy, wow, all these places where people are living longer and they're actually happy. What? We didn't realize that happy was something to be successful at.
And as an example, so one time I needed my gallbladder removed. I scheduled the gallbladder operation for the Wednesday afternoon before Thanksgiving so that I wouldn't miss any work.
Yep. Yep. Some people plan their having babies in that same way.
Right. I mean, now, of course, I recognize that what is so important, as you talked about before, is self-care. And that's why I've been for 10 years now, I've also been leading First Love Yourself workshops. And some people tend to think, oh, first love yourself. Isn't that being egotistical? No, it's about taking care of ourselves. And then, only then, can we take care of others.
Mm-hmm.
And self-care is so important. And again, hear another perfect example. When I worked the corporate world, of course, I would take my daughter to the doctor when she needed to go to the doctor. I never went to the doctor. I just, that didn't matter. I didn't need
Mm-hmm.
to go to a doctor. I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I avoided even something like that, because I didn't have the time, because I was working around the clock. But again, my daughter's welfare would be part of my job, right? So look.
Yeah, you'd criticize and scold her, you've got to go to the doctor. Meanwhile, you don't do it for yourself.
Exactly. And so that's why I lead these First Love Yourself workshops, because I find it is all too common that people in our society, and especially I tend to work with a lot of women because I'm in the yoga industry, and women in particular are kind of trained to take care of their children, take care of their parents, take care of their partner, take care of everyone at work.
Yeah.
Take care of the environment, take care of whatever. We take care of everything,
We're caretakers.
but we don't take care of ourselves.
And we cannot pour from an empty cup. Tell me when you started traveling the world and meeting your famous 12 gurus. I want to hear all about this.
Well, I started traveling the world very early because my grandparents lived in a border town in both Arizona and California. They lived in Tucson and then they lived in San Diego. So I always crossed the border when I would go and visit them. Back then, we would drive. I was raised in Chicago. We would drive from Chicago all the way to Tucson, and we would drive, and then they moved to San Diego. So we would do those cross-country drives in our non-air conditioned car, right? And I have family in Mexico as well. So I was always exposed to Spanish language. And then when I was 16, I did my first exchange program. That was when I went to the slaughterhouse in Mexico. And from age 16 on, I repeatedly, pretty much every year, I would go by myself back to Mexico. And then I went to college in Mexico. I also went to college in South America. And I've been traveling always. It's been a part of me. And my degree was in social anthropology, and social anthropology is all about understanding other cultures. So you have to travel and not tourist, but deep dive into the culture of the countries where you are. So I have always been doing that. And of course, in terms of my yogic practices, I've been doing yoga as long as I can remember. I've always done yoga in Mexico and in South America. So that was part of my formation and my growing up. It was just part of what I always did and what my values were. But as far as my gurus, it's kind of hard to, how do I pick my 12, right? And as I said, the 13th is my mother. So of course I grew up with her. But the earliest guru that I talk about in my book is, and this is my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram. It is somebody that I met 36 years ago when I was living in South America. And I'm not going to share the story of who that guru was, but I will just say that years after I met him, so it's a man, years after I met him, I was in Miami and I turned on the television and I heard his name on television. And I found out that I knew him as a very healthy, mobile, young professional. I turned on the television, I saw that he was running for the vice president of a country in South America, and he was now paraplegic. So I won't go into his story, but basically the concept of that chapter in this book is how laughter is the best medicine. So that's my guru for the concept of laughter as medicine. So you have to read the book to find out who this person was and find out what happened to him, because his story is incredible. And then, of course, the statistics about laughter as medicine are also just amazing. It's so important. And so that's why I chose that as one of the topics of my book.
Well, the name of your book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, is quite curious. And so, did you have a guru that was a boxer?
I did. However, usually people ask me if I was a boxer.
Yes.
So
I was going to
I
ask that next, but since you were a yoga instructor, I figured that you were a lover, not a fighter.
That's exactly why I came up with the title for the book, basically. So my personal background is when I did marketing communications, I used to promote boxing matches for a beer company. And of course I don't drink, right? I worked as a bartender in the United States and South America before I was 21. I pretty much stopped drinking alcohol by the time I was 21.
Oh.
But I used to promote boxing matches, but the name from the boxing ring to the ashram to me is such a dichotomy because I think of boxing as being so violent. And of course, the ashram is so peaceful. But the last chapter in my book is about a female from Texas who became a world-class boxer in California. And unfortunately, she got hit too many times. She suffered multiple traumatic brain injuries.
Oh.
So she ended up with dementia pugilistica, which is basically what Muhammad Ali had.
Oh.
And she was forced, of course, to leave the boxing world to save her life. She returned to Texas. She checked herself into a brain rehabilitation center, but she had gone from, and of course, so much is not just the physical, it's not even just the mental, it's the emotional. So she went from 130 pounds to 400 pounds because boxing was her life. She
And
could no
once
longer
you stop
walk.
that exercise too, it's
But it was also so much emotional, just because that was her life and what she was living for, she couldn't
didn't
live for.
have anymore.
Anyway, well, by the time I met her, she was the most beautiful, incredible Tai Chi instructor. So she took her physical movement practices and switched from boxing to Tai Chi and is the most positive person I know. And she's so peaceful. And it's the last chapter in the book. And some people have told me it was their favorite chapter. Some people have told me they cried tears of joy when they read that chapter as well.
Oh, that's lovely. That is lovely. I would love to also know, what do you think are some of the biggest concerns of our society?
Well, where do I begin? Just because we were talking about self-care and first loving yourself, I want to talk about one of the chapters of my book, which is based on a Swami who's an American who has been living in India for much of his life. And the concept of that chapter is really about love of self, love of others, love of nature, love of the planet. And the title of that chapter is Happiness Isn't a Big Bank Account. And, again, in our society in particular, we are so focused. Earn, save, spend, have the biggest house, the biggest car. Well, not in California because you're eco-friendly, but here in Texas, it's have the biggest car. And again, I worked in the marketing communications field my whole life. I know that we were encouraging people to buy and consume things that they did not need. It's all about consumption, and we really don't need that much. One of my favorite comedic shticks is George Carlin, and he has one that's talking about stuff. He's basically talking about how people accumulate so much stuff that they don't know what to do with. And it's hilarious. But of course, George Carlin passed away quite some time ago. So his recording of that is from a long time ago. But we've gotten so much worse as a society in accumulating more and more stuff that we don't need. So that's just one example. And then of course, everything is based on what my Swami says, but then I talk about people like George Carlin. I also talk about the book Spark Joy. So the book Spark Joy is, if something material in your life doesn't spark joy, get rid of it. And the less things you have, but if you're surrounded by minimal things, but if they all spark joy, then it's better. So that's just
Exactly.
one thing. The other thing that bothers me, there's so many things that bother me, the standard American diet. And
Do go on.
in my chapter about Satvic lifestyle, I talk about the dairy industry, the egg industry, and the reason why I stopped eating eggs and dairy was because, again, I've lived in different countries and I've worked in different countries, and I'm very used to seeing animals treated with more respect. And they eat the eggs from the hens in their yard. They milk the cows that are in their yard, and they're happy cows. While they're giving the milk, they're happy cows. The hens are happy hens. But the way that the American factory farming is horrendous. And we, again, the marketing world has convinced Americans that we need so much protein, which is not true. We have been taught that we need so much dairy, which is not true. And what I always tell my clients, I never tell my clients, be a vegetarian or be vegan, but be mindful of the source. Even if you're vegan, be mindful of the source of what you're eating. So, for example, there are a lot of vegan cheeses that are made from potato starch. I have to be very careful. I have to follow a low glycemic diet. I do not want any potato starch in my diet. However, you can find good vegan cheeses that are made from cashews or other more wholesome ingredients. And so anyway, the standard American diet, SAD, and that spells out what it is. And in addition to the chapter in my book that's based on Ayurveda, so I have one chapter in the book based on Ayurveda and another chapter in the book that's based on Satvic lifestyle, which is very much about being mindful of what we consume. But from an Ayurvedic standpoint, what I find fascinating, and this is one of the areas that I specialize in as a yoga therapist, is what we call the digestive fire. From an Ayurvedic perspective, we believe that we are only as healthy, body and mind and spirit, as our digestive fire. So in other words, if you have sluggish digestion, you're going to have physical, emotional, and spiritual backlashes. And again, this comes from Ayurveda, which is 5,000 years old. What I find fascinating is that modern medicine, the study of the gut microbiome, confirms all this. And so it's something that not that many people are aware of, but from the study of the gut microbiome, they do say that everything is related to your gut and your digestion. And I also want to say that Hippocrates, of course, the father of medicine, is attributed, we don't really know who said what, right? But he's attributed to saying all disease begins in the gut. And again, from the gut microbiome perspective, there are 22 million bacterial genes. And they say that that even affects, again, our mental health, as well as things such as Parkinson's, which are, of course, very complex neurological diseases.
My entire podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. There is nothing in our material that is here to treat, prevent, or cure any kind of disease. This is not medical advice. Neither is it therapy. So it's always important to know to go to somebody who is a professional in order to be able to seek the kind of advice and design nutritional support that is right for you. There is so much value in Ayurveda. There is a lot of information now about probiotics and the gut biome and healthy bacteria out there that's in the literature, to know that there is evidence supporting the benefits of both. And I don't think that one precludes the other. I think that from a genetic and DNA perspective, the way that I eat is going to be very different from the way that Deborah eats, is going to be very different from the way that you eat. And whether or not you choose to eat meat, whether or not you choose to eat dairy, whether or not you choose an Ayurvedic or Mediterranean diet, that is completely up to you. I think that the compelling thing to always think about is listen to what your body is telling you. Like, how do you feel? How do you feel after a meal? How do you feel during the day? Do you feel more self-love in what you're eating, or do you feel like you're doing it because you had a bad day and you just need that bag of chips, or you just need that bowl of ice cream because you just need to like coddle yourself into feeling better? Do you feel like you're addicted to certain types of foods? Maybe it's sugar, maybe it is alcohol, maybe it is caffeine. It could be any of those things. See what happens if you do make a little bit of a change, and just notice what you notice, as they say.
And I also lead workshops in digestive disorders and also in weight management. And I do want to mention that even though I am trained in Ayurveda, I am not an Ayurvedic doctor, which is a totally different level. And I see an Ayurvedic doctor. I have been seeing an Ayurvedic doctor for 14 years. And the person that I feature, my guru that I feature in my book on the chapter on Ayurveda, was my Ayurvedic teacher in India. But what I do wholeheartedly encourage everyone, it's exactly what you were saying, is the principle of Ayurveda is everyone is different. Mm-hmm. And not only is everyone different, but everyone is different every single day and every hour of the day, which may be why, again, if you listen to your body, maybe in the middle of the day, you crave the ice cream, but I hope you don't crave the ice cream at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the other thing that Ayurveda teaches, which now is becoming more popular in terms of local food, the same thing. You should eat what is seasonal, and you should eat what is grown near where you are. And we do know now, or we hear now about, for example, the positive benefits of local honey. So if I'm consuming honey, let's just say from the UK, it's not going to benefit me as much as if I consume honey from Texas, from my region.
Because that's where you're living, and that's where your environment is, and that's where your natural embodiment is. And so eating local makes very good sense. And I think that that is one of the things that I was bringing up, and that is that we've become so transient as human beings. Thousands and thousands of years, we've barely moved outside of our villages, and now we are transplanted. I was not intended to pick up from Korea and move to Los Angeles, but now I have an American diet and things are different. And so my body is going to react very differently. Now that I'm here, it's almost like I have to understand that there is a give and take between my nature and my nurture.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So you talk a lot about chronic pain, obesity, anxiety, depression, digestive orders, all of these physical ailments, mental ailments, and understanding that nutrition is a way forward, meditation, being a yoga practitioner, and breath work is a way forward. What are some of the other things that you find beneficial for people who might have some of these proclivities in their lives?
Well, what I consider my book, so my book, again, it's 12 chapters from 12 different gurus. And I really consider my book a yoga or yoga therapy in disguise book. So for example, there's a chapter on laughter as medicine, right?
Yeah.
But there is a thing now called laughter yoga. And laughter yoga was created by a physician in India and his yoga teacher wife. And he talks about, he has all the statistics about how laughter, and in particular laughter yoga, how it is good for your circulation, how it's good. They say you can build a six-pack with laughter. And so I always tell people, I have a six-pack, it's just underneath my layers of fat. But there are so many benefits of laughing. And what's kind of wild to me is that they have found, there were studies in maybe Australia, somewhere on the other side of the ocean or oceans, and they discovered that simulated laughter, which is what laughter yoga is, has even greater benefits than spontaneous laughter. So anyway, that's kind of wild. The other thing that I talk about in my book, another chapter. So again, my book is not what a lot of people think of as yoga, but to me, it's all yoga. Another one of the chapters is my guru is a US Air Force chaplain rabbi. And the concept is it's like Sabbath, but it can be a secular Sabbath, or we also sometimes call it digital disconnect.
Yes, yes.
And it is so important for everyone to get off of their devices more frequently, because we're like octopuses, and we're holding so many devices all around us and our cars. And I grew up in Chicago, where we take public transportation, which is better than driving, but it's still ideally stay home once a week and just stay home and enjoy the company of whomever is living with you or yourself. Go for walks in nature. Don't go in your car. Just appreciate the surroundings and find more time for mindfulness once a week. If you just disconnect all of your devices, ideally for 24 hours, it's going to bring about a much better balance in your mind, body, spirit. And yoga is all about mind, body, spirit balance. So that's why, to me, this is all about yoga, even though we're not doing a downward dog.
Boy, that is a tough ask for so many people. To give up a device for 24 hours, it's like cut off your arm. I know that that's a hard one for a lot of people. I have tried it. I know that getting my phone off of my nightstand was a big coup for me at nighttime, just like not having it there and moving it into a closet or into another room, because I know that even just your parasympathetic nervous system is on when you know that your phone is close by. And so, yeah, those things are not easy habits to break. We will be real here, but can be so beneficial. I do love that. I know even for people at mealtime, making sure it's a no device mealtime even might be a start for you.
Well, taking that even further,
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned, the digestive disorders and the weight management workshops that I lead. So I do a lot that focuses on mindful eating.
Mm-hmm.
And a very common yogic tradition is silence at your meal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was raised that meals are family time, and that's when you share with a family. Unfortunately, now too often meal times are go through the drive-through or go to the food court, and you just feed your face and rush on.
Yeah.
But in yogic tradition, what is very common is you sit by yourself. Well, you can have as many people around you, but you sit and you kind of close yourself off to the others, and you just focus on your food and you don't talk to anyone. And again, that's more mindful eating.
And if you can't get to that level, a lot of people say grace. They say have a moment of silence beforehand to give back thanks, to bless the food and give it positive energy. Because as you said, the way that the industry manufactures food is not very mindful. It's getting more mindful than I think that it was. There are more mindful choices because of the recognition of how devastating it was, and the way that food was served up was just like calorie dense and nutrient poor. And so getting back to recognizing the importance of the energy flow of how it gets from farm to table or wherever you get your food, and it matters each step of the way. And making sure that there's respect, thanking everything that it took to get your food onto your plate. So much had to happen in order to get the food from where it was to your plate. And even those simple moments to start could be a step for you in just feeling a bit calmer, a bit happier, and more fulfilled in your day.
Other thing I wanted to add is, again, I really like looking at different cultures and different practices from different countries.
Yeah, yeah.
We look at French food. And we as Americans think, oh, there's too much fat, there's cream, everything, there's
Swimming in
butter.
butter.
Yeah, and they're drinking a lot of wine. So we tend to sometimes look down and think that our diet is better. Yet, of course, they have found that the French people are healthier. But one of the things that I found when I was in France, this was a while ago, but it would drive me crazy because, again, I want quick, 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 right? I'm used to getting served immediately. But when you go to a nice restaurant in France, you might pick from 6 different foods that they are going to serve you. Each one will be a very small portion, and it can take an hour and a half or 2 hours before you get all of those little plates.
It's true.
And the idea, of course, is for you to savor every morsel and to not scarf it down, which we are trying to scarf it down. I have to say, when I was in Paris last, it bothered me to see so many people eating on the run too. But again, if you think of traditional customs, and I do believe that in the United States as well, our ancestors, it took them a lot longer to cook the meal. And so it took them a lot longer to sit and enjoy the meal.
Yes, yes. What are some of the more surprising or fun stories that you've had from your travels? We talked about you going to France and to India, South America, of course, in Mexico. Are there any that stick out in your mind that you'd like to share?
When I was in India, I mentioned that I'm not an Ayurvedic doctor, but I am trained in Ayurveda. And we did a field trip. And as we were waiting in line to board a boat, we were amongst a group of maybe 300 people waiting to board the boat. And our Ayurvedic doctor teachers, they taught us to identify the Ayurvedic constitutions, which are called the doshas, just by looking at people and seeing how they moved, seeing all their mannerisms. So the official way to identify a constitution, which is very similar to traditional Chinese medicine, is through pulse testing and also even looking at the tongue. Again, very similar to traditional Chinese medicine. But we were taught to look at people and how they acted and to guess what their constitution was based on that. So that was really fun. And then another thing that I talk about in my book is we went to a diner in India with, again, it was all our group of Ayurvedic students and our 2 Ayurvedic doctor teachers. So we go to a diner and it's the same menu for everyone, but you're able to choose your choice of bread. Now, of course, it's not bread as we know it in the West. It's the different Indian breads. And so one of our teachers, he said, I'm going to order the bread for each of you based on your constitution. So he would just go around and quick, 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 say, this for you, this for you. And he said, for me, puri, which is deep fried. I've never eaten deep fried food in my life. It was I was always weight conscious. I always had a tendency to carry more weight. So again, I would never in a million years ever choose to eat something that was deep fried. But sure enough, he knew that that was what I needed for my dosha.
Oh, interesting. I did a test. I think I was bidoshic, or is that how you say it?
It's common. You can also be tridoshic. So tridoshic is very even, but typically nobody is 100% one. It's always a range. Have 3 levels that you are part of you since conception. And then every day you have different levels. So it's your levels upon conception and then your levels right now.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think I was Kapha Pitta, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you can tell just by looking at me or if I stick my tongue out, if you'd be able to know. I would love to invite everybody to pick up Deborah's book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram. No doubt it's filled with fascinating wisdom in very digestible, pun intended, methods and ways that you can incorporate tips and tricks and lessons into your life. Deborah, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today. Thank you so much for all the fun stories and for all of the life lessons that you've imparted. It's been
Well, thank
wonderful.
you. It's been a joy to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Human Beauty Movement podcast. Be sure to follow, rate, and review us wherever you stream podcasts. The Human Beauty Movement is a community-based platform that cultivates the beauty of humankind. Check out our workshops, find us on social media, and share our inspiration with all the beautiful humans in your life. Learn more at thehumanbeautymovement.com. Thank you so much for being a beautiful human.